Raymond Weinstein, who is an unfortunate story in chess history. He had great promise, but he had mental illness and sadly got out of chess and got out of mainstream society. He actually killed a person in his mental illness. Raymond Allen Weinstein, born in New York on April 25th, 1941. He's still alive, and very promising was his chess career indeed. But yes, his mental illness stymied him. He won the U.S. Junior Championship in 1958. He played third board on the U.S. 1960 World Student Team Championship, which we won for the first time. He was third board behind Calmy and behind Lombardi. Both Calmy and Lombardi, by the way, in that event, won gold medals on their respective boards. Weinstein shared the gold medal for board 3 with Alexander Nickton with 7.5 out of 10. He graduated from Brooklyn College in 1963 with a degree in psychology, but it was about that time that he began to manifest his own mental illness. Some described him as being schizophrenic, but it was in 1964 that he killed his elderly roommate after an argument and has been confined in institutions ever since. Dr. Reuben Fine did visit Weinstein in his confinement, and he maintained his ability to play chess, but that's all we can really say. All right, let's get into this game. By the way, the ratings shown on the screen were their current USCF ratings. This game was played on December 18th, 1960. Well, let's start with E4 as always. E6 is the French defense, and D4 is the normal variation. D5, Knight C3, and Bishop B4 is Vinever's variation. I've heard people pronounce this Winauer. That's not the correct pronunciation. Szymon Vinever was born March 6th, 1838, and he passed away November 29th, 1919. And he was a Polish chess player who was ranked second in the world between July 1878 and May 1880. At the Paris 1867 tournament, which was his first international tournament, Vinever finished second place, tying with Wilhelm Steinitz behind Ignaz von Köllisch. Vinever remained one of the world's best players for the next 15 years. At Warsaw 1868, Vinever won the first chess tournament conducted in Poland. At Paris 1878, Vinever tied for first place with 14 wins, 3 losses, and 5 draws. The other first-place finisher was Johannes Zukertort. His best result, Vinever's, was a first-place finish tying with Wilhelm Steinitz at Vienna in 1882 in what was the strongest chess tournament in history up to that point. Vinever has several openings named for him, although this is the most familiar and common and popular one. Bobby playing the advanced variation with E5, Knight E7, A3 hits the bishop, bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop, C5, A4, queen's knight to C6, Knight F3, Queen A5, hitting the undefended pawn, Queen D2 defending, Bishop D7, and Bishop D3, really trying to entice this guy to come up here to C4. And in this case, the enticement pans out. C4 is played, but usually the most common line is pawn F6, which of course is answered by castles, pawn takes pawn, and castles. That is the most common line, not played in this game. Instead, Weinstein with C4 here, hitting the bishop. Bishop, of course, retreats to E2. It's the only safe square that does not impede our king. Queenside castles from Weinstein. Now bishop A3. Pawn F6 now, and we castle to the king's side. Knight to F5. King's rook to E1. The bot calling for king's rook to B1, which is most common. Let me show that line. King's rook to B1, the most frequently played move, and that's followed by H5, H4, and queen's rook to G8, lining up here. Now, I was actually considering, with this knight here, I was considering G4, chasing that knight away, and then I'll have to come to E7, and now bring my rook over to the open B file, and I get star there. Bobby with rook F E1. Bishop e8, maybe here. I guess black should play h5, as in the line I just showed. That effectively outposts his knight because it prevents my idea of g4, doesn't it? So that knight is safe and sound there for a long time to come. But Weinstein with the idea of relocating his bishop somewhere in here. Now Bobby does play the g4, hitting that knight. So knight f e7. The eval bar showing white with a smidge of an advantage. Bishop f1, speaking of reassigning bishops, no doubt eyeing the h3 square. Bishop back to d7 says, okay, I've thought better than to try to relocate my bishop. I can't come here anymore with this pawn here, and this doesn't have much future either, so I'll come back and thwart any ideas on this diagonal. And Bobby says, I'm going to move there anyway, and it's marked as a mistake. I'm not sure exactly why it's a mistake, maybe because with the bishop no longer on e2 and not on g2, that knight is now undefended with this pawn on g4. So I would expect the queen's rook to come to f8, and when we capture the e-man, that's a discovered attack on the knight. So instead, what could we play? You could still get one of your rooks to the b1 square. You could also bring your bishop up here to d6. That's a strong controlling move containing the king. Let's see what all those moves give us. We get a thumbs up for bishop d6. We get a thumbs up for queen's rook to b1, although this rook is not doing anything, so probably the better rook to choose would be the king's rook to d1. I get a star for that. You want to use the rook that's not already active. All right, all those moves are viable. Bishop h3, not liked by the bot. h6 here gets the big red X. Knight g6 being called for. What about my idea about rook df8? What does the bot think of that? It gives me a thumbs up. Certainly deserves consideration, doesn't it? Threatening the discovered attack. h6 it was, and bishop to d6 now. Marked inaccurate. I really like this move, as I mentioned a moment ago. The bot calling for king's rook to b1, which I also mentioned a moment ago. Now, queen's rook to f8, and queen's rook to b1, marked as a mistake, calling for king's rook. Well, as I mentioned also a moment ago, use the rook that's not doing anything. And here, if he plays the discovered attack against your knight, you take that pawn with your knight, getting your knight out of danger and putting some questions out here. After knight takes knight, I like my bishop right there aiming at that undefended knight, so I'll take this with my pawn. You have to take it. You cannot allow the fork against your queen and your king. So you have to take it either with your bishop or your pawn. I prefer to keep my bishop applying pressure here. So I would take it with the pawn. Now he could sacrifice the exchange theoretically, and we get a star. I don't want to take this yet. Let's send his queen out of the way first. You gain a quick tempo here. Hit the queen, queen d8, and then we can pick up that rook. It's marked inaccurate. It changed it. Changed it to a check mark. And after rook takes, defend this pawn maybe, and put some heat up here. Well, it's also marked inaccurate. Marked inaccurate with queen e3. Okay, queen e3 does the same exact thing. It looks up at a7 and still defends this pawn. Okay. Defend with king here, I think. I guess queen e3 gives it a smidge more scope than queen d4. Another option, of course, coming back, instead of either rook to b1, is to just take this pawn, right? What do we get there? We get a star. And now I'll definitely play queen e3. Anyway, Bobby with queen's rook to b1. Rook f7. Defending the knight, marked inaccurate, gives him some options to double his rooks as well. E takes f6, g takes f6, now the bishop to g3. The idea here, of course, of retracting your bishop is to double up with your bishop and get a threat along this diagonal, a battery attack, right? So, in other words, queen f4 is in his sights. Knight g6 prevents the queen from coming to f4. Rook b5 hitting the queen. That's marked as a mistake. What should you do? Challenge the knight? Oh, what did the bot say? Queen c1? That's interesting. I'm not real sure why. Queen c1. Well, rook b5 was played. What about challenging the knight here? I'm told that's a mistake. It downgraded it to a inaccuracy, but still not liked. My thought was after takes, I see the problem is after I take here, that relinquishes the b8 square for the king to go hide. Right. And then the king can hide safely in the corner. Rook b5, Bobby's choice, and amazingly, he does not take this pawn and attack the rook. He played queen a6, and that gets a big red X, and queen takes pawn is suggested. Undefends the rook and says, you better run and hide. Just retreat it all the way back, I guess. He can play here, though. Rook eb1 instead of the retreat. That'll be answered by b6, but you're right. That can be played, I think. Gets a check mark. I like the way you're thinking, though. Double those rooks. My thought was to connect the rooks and then attack laterally. All right, well, queen a6 was played here. And now Bobby does play his king's rook to b1. Again, queen c1 being called for. Yeah, I guess it's to put his queen on a3. Is that the idea of queen c1? So if he plays b6, I'll play queen a3. I get a star. And then you can always bring this over later to either of these squares. Bobby, with king's rook to b1, awarded a big red X from the annotator. b6 now. And now queen c1. And now it's given a question mark. Slide over here first, says the bot. Well, queen takes the pawn, and he retreats his rook to b2, and that is marked. Wow, Bobby getting a lot of derogatory marks here. The bot calling for bishop f1, so a lot of confusing bot suggestions as well. I would prefer to simply play my queen. Okay, I'm told that that's inaccurate. Oh, it upgraded me to a check mark. And the idea is I'm threatening to trap his queen, aren't I? Let's do a blunder real quick. Queen is trapped. So that was my idea. Well, Weinstein puts his queen on a3. Oops, what happened? I left a move off. Oh, here. Weinstein puts his queen on a3, providing himself with an escape route, because the trap is still threatened, isn't it? He's still threatening to play rook a1, isn't he? Let's do that nothing move again. Still trapped. So the idea of queen a3 is to escape somewhere. Now it also heats up this pawn, so Bobby defends it with queen e3. And that is marked inaccurate. Wow. I don't know. It breaks the pin here. It defends here. No. King b7, queen e7 being called for right now. Yeah, I kind of liked f5 here. What about f5 with the threat of the fork? I get a check mark for that. That would be winning, so white would have to take, and he's starting to really loosen up his king's side. King b7, the choice from Raymond Weinstein. Knight h4, that gets the big red X, wanting to deal with this knight. Knight d2 is the move that keeps fighting, according to the bot. Well, knight takes knight. Bishop takes knight, and pawn e5, and that is a blunder, ladles and jelly spoons. Captain Blunderpants. And I don't know about you, but I see this immediately. We've got this piece relationship here, and this one here. e5 is literally inviting white to discover the super attack against b6. And we can sacrifice a rook on b6 for 2 pawns, and our queen jumps right up there supported by our rook. So a surprising blunder from Weinstein. Even I could see that immediately. Of course, enough puzzles and puzzle rushes really opened my eyes to this. So h5 being called for here. Right. What does white do about this threat? He has to play to g5. He cannot allow black to open the h-file. So he'd have to play to g5. And white's position is a little bit dubious. King quite exposed here. Let's get our queen into the game and start looking in this direction. But e5 it is. Pawn takes pawn, discovering the super attack. And I don't know, could he have already been in time pressure here? Because he doesn't even seem to consider this possibility, and it's a pretty basic tactic. F takes e5. Does nothing. He's oblivious to this super attack. I mean, even rook e8 and he'll be fine. The bot calling for d4. But I think if you just bring your rook over, you should be okay, right? I get a star. And the idea is now I can play this, but... Oh, I get a double exclam. I'm sure. Oh, what? How unfair. I hate it when it does that to me. It gives me a double exclam and then takes it back. Man. After pawn takes and queen takes, king c8 here. Give check with queen b7. Take this with check. Forces the rook to capture. He might be able to hold on here. Give check here. He can't come this way, so he's forced back that away. And maybe, just maybe, he has to blockade here. Yeah, he doesn't have any good way to make progress from here, though. What can I play now? Yeah, maybe he's attacking here, but I don't mind him taking my bishop because I need this square and the queen's covering it. All right, so let's sacrifice our bishop. Note, he can't take with the bishop because the bishop is busy defending the knight. The eval bar telling me this is still dead equal. I guess black can force a repetition, right? Give check and just go back and forth. If he ever tries to avoid the repetition and come this way, he can't come this way because of the fork. But if he ever tries to come to e2, you just keep it up this way. And you have to yield to the repetition, and it's a draw. Let's go back. Okay, so rook e8 would have been okay to engineer a repetition. Now, Bobby, he gets awarded a double exclam. Will the bot take that away? Like it took... what a biased... Ficklebot. Ficklebot gives me a double exclam and then takes it away, gives Bobby a double exclam, and lets him keep it. So you can't take or it's mate in two, by the way. Right, so he played king a8. He cannot take the rook because it's mate if he does. Well, because queen takes and then checkmate, protected by the rook. Note that if he goes the other way, it's the same thing. It's just different. Because our bishop is covering that square. Checkmate. So he tries king a8, and Bobby retreats his rook to b5, and this bishop is going to come in here and attack along this diagonal. So bishop e6 defends the pawn. So bishop g3, super attacking the b8 square, basically tethering all of black's pieces to the defense of that square. Because if this rook isn't defending, we can sacrifice a rook. Let's push this, just for the sake of demonstration. So there's check. It gave me a double exclam. Yay. And there's checkmate. Just showing what's lurking out there right now, guys. So that's the idea of bishop g3. And he played pawn e4? He played right into it. Queen d6 being called for. Queen d6, we're going to play bishop g2 now. And after h5, we'll take that. Thank you very much. And then let's get in line with the queen and super attack this pawn from 3 directions while applying some pressure to the queen. If he plays rook b7, I will take this right here. You get a double exclam for that. After he takes, I'll take with the bishop, keeping the pressure in this direction. All right. E4 was played, and Bobby Fischer, oh my goodness, what a move. Can you guess what Bobby plays here? What a move. Based on what I just showed you, you should be able to find this move. I just showed you that white is that is not white. That's not right, Ship. I just showed you that if it's not for this rook, I've got rook b8, which means this rook is overworked, which means it is not defending the pawn, which means I can take it. Bobby with a double exclam. So the point is, as I just showed a minute ago, you can't take this queen right? If you take the queen, you've got the checkmate that I just showed. I get a double exclam again. Now I'm getting awarded with the double exclams. It's about time I got some respect from Ficklebot. Only legal move, and that is checkmate. Defended by my bishop. That's occupied. That's covered. Bada bing, bada boom. So Weinstein resigned. If he tries to defend the rook with queen f8 and put the question here, well, this is still undefended, isn't it? So let's just grab that. Attacking the knight, threatening mate in 2. If he x-ray defends, which gets a star, but it's still losing, isn't it? Let's take the undefended pawn, pinning the knight. Presumably, he'll want to get our queen off the board. So let's go queen d8, and let's avoid that trade. He might still try to get the queen trade here. Take this pawn, I think. And eventually, let's say he keeps trying to trade queens. Eventually, speaking of overworked pieces, we can overwork the queen with rook h5 here, right? This rook is overworked. It can't capture my rook and protect its queen. And the queen is overworked. It can't capture my queen and protect its rook. So he has to move his queen and keep it on the 8th rank. Let's move queen c8 and trade rooks and force you to take here. And we're simplifying. We got extra stuff on the board. Yeah, we're putting the light squared bishop to work right now with bishop g2. He may want to defend again, take the pawn, give himself a square perhaps. No, I can fork the king and the queen, check. And that will be that. In fact, don't take this right away. Give check first. And then, when the knight's pinned, oh, that's gorgeous. There's checkmate. Knight's pinned, you can't take it's illegal. It's illegal, and an illegal is a sick bird. You cannot move like a sick bird. What a game by Bobby Fischer, even though way early on, the bot criticized him mercilessly for quite a few of his moves. But some real nice tactics there in the first round.